So hopefully you're having a lot of fun playing through your first strumming song. That's your second song overall already. And today I'm going to start off by showing you how to use a pick or a plectrum. Now picks are a really helpful tool to help us strum and pick notes. You'll see that most electric guitarists are using picks as they're going through pentatonic scales and things like that, or as they're strumming as well. But acoustic guitarists have a little bit more flexibility when they're doing things like fingerstyle, and they might not want to use a pick. And so whether you want to use a pick in the future or not, today I want to show you how you can hold a pick and how to strum with it as well, so that you can get the technique down to master any song that you want to later on down the track. Now the first question you might be asking is, what type of pick should I be using? Now just remember that they do use pick and plectrum interchangeably. It is the same thing, but what type of pick should I be using? Because there are different widths of the pick that you use, which changes how flexible the pick is. So right now I'm using a Jim Dunlop 1mm pick. Now there are a lot thinner and also a lot thicker picks than this, and the difference with a thicker pick is that they're a lot more rigid. They don't move as easily, which means firstly there'll be quite an intense sound as you pick, but it's actually really important that you think about the width of your pick, because as beginners, you don't want something that's going to be really hard to pick with. Now, the reason it might be hard to pick or strum with a thicker pick is that there's not much give on the pick, which means it's very rigid as you're strumming down. And so what a lot of beginner guitarists find is that they're likely to drop their pick, sometimes in the sound hole, which is really frustrating to try and get it out. But it's a lot easier to drop a pick when it's very rigid, because you're not getting that give and it's hard to hold on well. So what I'd recommend is that you try and use a thin pick to start off with. It might be a 0.46mm or a 0.6mm, and that's really going to be flexible enough to let you strum well without having to really grip onto the pick. So now that we've got the right thickness of the pick, we can get into how to hold a pick. Now there are a lot of ways to hold a pick, but I think the best technique to use is you want to use your index finger and thumb, of course, as everyone would, but you want to create a bit of a hook with your index finger. And so what you're then doing is you're just placing your thumb on top of that. Okay, so if you place your pick just in there with the pointy side pointing out that way, and then you place your thumb over the top, you might be able to see there's enough of a gap for me to strum down without using my fingers as well and getting them all caught up in the strings. But there's not too much of a gap that I don't have enough of a grip on it, because if that's the sort of gap that we're dealing with all of that way and I'm only holding onto the edge, then we're going to have the problem of me dropping that pick. So you want a bit of a gap, but just to remind you, you've got that hook, you're placing your thumb over that, and then you've got a decent gap there for the pick, okay? And what we're going to do is just strum through. So you don't need to try strumming through a particular chord, just try and get used to playing with a pick. Okay? And now you might want to try playing the E major that we learnt yesterday. So get your E major chord shape in order and then try and strum through that. Okay, so that should be your E major. Make sure all strings are ringing out, and you want to make sure that you're picking every string as you go through. So it should be a gliding motion. You don't want to pick each individual string, but it should just be a gliding motion as you go down like that. Okay? And now the next challenge is going to be, if you go into an A major, like we've already learnt, the challenge will be, when you do that, trying to avoid the 6th string. Now there's a few different ways to do that. We could place our thumb over that 6th string to mute it. So there, if I play that, you're not hearing any note, I'm just stopping that from ringing out, because otherwise, if I clip that on the way through my chord, you actually shouldn't be hearing that for an A major chord, as we've already learnt. So you can place your thumb over there, or it's just about working on your accuracy with the pick, okay? So then we've got our 5th string to the 1st string. And that's our A major. And so hopefully you're starting to understand how a pick works as you're plucking down, or on our E major. And then you compare that with maybe just using your index finger rather than a pick. So you can hear that's a lot more mellow, but the pick really adds on that vibrance. Okay, so hopefully you're hearing the difference there. So I hope you've got the hang of that. And do remember that you don't have to use a pick if you don't want to. You can just use your fingers to strum through. Your nails are a perfectly viable option, or just the flesh of your fingers as well as you're beginning and learning how to strum well. You want to make sure you're doing it with good technique, but you can use a pick or not. It's up to you.